Okay, so let's look at the different classifications of bones in this case. There are four primary classes of bones, although depending on your textbook, some will give you 5 different classes of it, and I'll point out what those differences are. So let's look at the classes, and then once we go through those, we'll go through and look at some more of the specifics about each different type of bone. Okay, so let's look at this first one here. Long bones. Okay, so we're going to have the basic bones. We're going to have long bones, we're going to have short bones, we have flat bones and irregular bones, and then we'll come back to this one here in just a minute. So let's look at the basic structure of a long bone. And long bones are bones that are longer than wide. Okay, so you can see here's the width of this bone, very small. There's the length of the bone, much longer. So your general description of a long bone is it's longer than it is wide. If you are, let me go back to this one here in just a second. Long bones, which is what we're going to spend most of our time on in this semester, long bones will have another characteristic feature on this, and it's the shaft of the bone. So this is the length of the bone, you know, between those two areas. This shaft, it's a cylindrical shaft, and we're going to name these later, so don't try to memorize it right now. We'll get into this. This one is going to be called the diaphysis. Okay, so that shaft of a long bone is called the diaphysis. One of the functions for this is going to be allowing for weight-bearing or compressive type of forces. Another type of bone that we're looking at, we're going to be the short bones down here. And this is a short bone is where length is approximately equal to the width. Okay, so be careful with this one. You just have to give it a little bit of leeway on some of this stuff, okay? So in general, length and width are approximately the same. And if we go to the top right portion of the picture, let me move the picture over a little bit. Not that one. So let me get this. Okay, so if we're looking at the next one, which is going to be flat bones have a thin, flat surface, okay? And the primary function of a flat bone is going to be protective in nature, okay? You're going to see those type of bones in the skull and so forth. It will have a greater surface area on it that allows for additional attachments to muscles. Flat bones may be slightly curved. So if we're looking at, let's say, a piece of paper. So if we're looking at a piece of paper, yes, it's nice and flat in this case. And you don't really have a bone that's perfectly flat like this, but it has a flat surface on it. But flat bones in the body can have a slight curvature to it. Okay, so you can have something like this. That gives it a slight little curve, and that's going to be found in areas like the skull. Irregular bones on this one. These irregular bones will have a complex shape and size associated with it. And as such, they don't really fit into any of these other categories. So on this one, you're going to be looking at the vertebra, where it's definitely, this is all going to be different components of bones. It really doesn't have a set defined shape, thus the word irregular. So what we want to do right now is go through, we'll point out what the different types of bones are. We'll look at the different areas of the body where some of these bones are found. So let's just pause this. And I don't think, there we go. Let me pause this video. Okay, so let's look at the different videos. Let me just put a little disclaimer or notice on here. Many of the pictures and the graphics that you see, so what we're going to be using on this one, when we're seeing this skull here, you can see how we're moving this around. All of these images are going to be associated, let me get rid of this, are all going to be associated with the a program called Visible Body. Okay, so this is the program that I was talking about in class on some of those. So if I don't mention this on all the videos or something, most of these are going to be from the visible body on that. Okay, so let's look, well, the first one here, we're going to be dealing with short bones. So let's just look at the different areas of here. So short bones typically are going to be parts of the skull. Okay, so we're going to see the difference, and we're going to be naming all these different bones as we go through. So you can see these are basically, I'm sorry, did I say short bones? These are flat bones. Okay, I think I said short. So these are flat bones in this case. And we're going to be naming those. There's going to be the scapula, which is going to be your shoulder blade, commonly known as your shoulder blade. It's mostly flat, so you have a lot of flat surface here, but don't let the spine of the scapula, this structure here, throw you. And don't jump into an irregular bone on this one, okay? But most of the surface is flat on this one. You're going to have the sternum, which is going to be in front. Those are considered flat bones as well. And then we have your ribs, which are also considered flat bones. Okay, so those are your basic flat bones that we're looking at. And so let's look at long bones. Long bones are typically found in your extremities, so your upper or lower extremity. And we're going to go through each one of these. There's going to be the humerus of the arm, then the radius and ulna, which is in your forearm. Radius is going to be on the side of the thumb. Okay, and then you're going to have the femur, and then you're going to have your tibia and fibula on those two different bones. You're going to have the metacarpals of your hands and feet. Metacarpals are going to be located, let me get this into the picture here. That's going to be this portion of your hand, or if we're looking at here, that's going to be this area, okay? And then you have the same component. Let me raise this up. That's going to be those of your feet. So those are going to be metacarpals of your hands. Oops, let me go with this. These are metacarpals. Those are metatarsals. And then the last ones are going to be phalanges, and those are going to be your fingers. Okay, so these are your long bones. Even though the size of the bone may be very small, they're not considered short bones. And what's the difference between a long bone and a short bone? Is in a long bone, it's longer than it is wide. So let's zoom in on one of these. Let's go way in. So let's look at this. This is your pinky, okay? So you're going to have 3 different sets of phalanges on here. So let's look at this little tiny one. That little tiny one is this little piece right here. Let me bring it in a little bit closer. That's this area, okay? So even though the bone is not very long in physical dimensions, it's longer than it is wide, okay? So that makes it a long bone. Now, if we're going to go back into short bones, since we just talked about short bones, those are going to be your carpals and tarsals. So wrist bones, this is going to be this area, okay? So those are going to be your carpal bones, and we're going to need to name those, especially when we're getting into the lab. So those are carpal bones, and tarsal bones are your ankle bones. And short bones, the definitive or the criteria for that is they are as long as they are as wide, or approximately long as they are wide. And which other ones do we need to do here? Irregular bones. Okay, the key things on the irregular bones, we're looking at the vertebra. Okay, so these don't really have a well-defined shape or size to it. They're pretty complex. And then we're also looking at pelvic bones. Now again, this one's an easy one to mistake between a flat bone, okay, because there's a lot of a flat surface on here, but we're also having some of these other bones down in this area. So the pelvic bones are also considered irregular bones. Now let's look at the other classification of bone, and this is where Some books will say there's four classes of bones. Other ones will say 5 classes. In this case, what we're going to be looking at are sesamoid bones. If your textbook breaks it down into 5 classes, where you have long bones, short bones, flat bones, irregular, and sesamoid bones, okay, other books will have long, flat, irregular, short, and a subcategory of short bone would be a sesamoid bone. And a sesamoid bone is essentially a sesamoid, a sesame seed. There we go. A sesame seed shaped bone that is located within tendons. Okay, and this is to allow or to protect the tendon from abrasion as it rubs over some of the bone. So as you can see, this is going to be a bone here. Let me see if I can get rid of. Let me fade. Nope. No, that's the whole bone. Okay, can't really do that one. But this is going to be the sesamoid bone, and you're going to have muscles up here that kind of go through the patella down here. You're also going to find some sesamoid bones in the hands and your feet, and they're found within tendons on this one. So those are your basic classifications of bones. And the next thing we're going to do, we're going to jump into the gross anatomy of bones, and then jump into the microscopic anatomy of bones. Okay, see you in a minute.